I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Did you know that James Remar was abruptly removed a few days into the filming of Aliens after being cast as Corporal Hicks? I'll go back to that later, but the reason why is convoluted. James Remar always seemed a little strange to me. On TV, he appeared sinister, menacing, and supremely mysterious. He exuded a sense of tension, as if something would break at any second. That edge persisted for a while. What on earth happened to James Remar then? Black is doomed. On December 31st, 1953, James Remar was born William James Remar in Boston, Massachusetts. Remar always appeared drawn to something less secure and predictable. Despite the fact that his mother worked in mental health and his father was a lawyer, both of whom had steady, respectable jobs. He attended New York's local Playhouse School of the Theater, which also produced such luminaries as Steve McQueen, Diane Keaton, and Gregory Peck. Remar started molding that presence, the coiling, magnetic energy that would characterize so many of his roles there. There was something passionate about him right from the start. He didn't grin his way into auditions, and he wasn't your average leading guy. He burnt holes in the room, brooded, and glared. Casting agencies took a gamble on him after directors took notice, and gradually the industry realized that James Remar was more than just an actor. He was something else. For many, The Warriors was James Remar's big break, and for me, it was the first time I ever saw him on TV. He portrayed Ajax, the irascible fighter who fought without thinking. Additionally, Remar was Ajax. He didn't feel like he was acting. Rather, he felt as though he might lose it at any moment. It felt genuine. The intensity didn't appear forced. The Warriors turned into a beloved classic. However, Remar stood out among all the crazy characters. His movements and the way he looked down on people had a physical and erratic quality. You were unable to look away from him. He also didn't play the Hollywood game off-screen. He wasn't working the press or grinning for the cameras. He exuded a genuine air of distance and a subdued tension that only served to heighten his mystique. In a conventional sense, he was never in the lead. However, he took control when he appeared in a scene. Had that kind of presence, in fact. He would collaborate with director Walter Hill once more after The Warriors, this time opposite Eddie Murphy, in a movie that would solidify his status as one of the decade's most intense supporting characters. When 48 Hours debuted in theaters in 1982, it revolutionized many things. It provided James Remar one of the most heartless roles of his career and catapulted Eddie Murphy into stardom. He portrayed the vicious, insane prisoner, Albert Gans, like a shark, constantly on the move, constantly in peril. I recall realizing after watching this that this man was not only intense, but also frightening. There were no soft edges, no winking at the crowd. Remar's portrayal of villains lacked appeal. He wasn't the smooth-talking nemesis you secretly support, like Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber or Robert Shaw. He gave off the impression of being a very dangerous and unpredictable person. He didn't appear to be a man posing as a murderer. He gave off the impression of being one. He became Hollywood's go-to heavy thanks to his 48-hour work. He then made appearances in genre movies such as Rent-A-Cop, Quiet, Cool, Cruising, and The Cotton Club. He had no idea where he would end up, but when he did, he added a little edge and tension to everything. However, things were beginning to fall apart behind the scenes. He has both talent and presence. However, something was tugging at the margins, and not all industry people were prepared to continue giving him second chances. And it brings us full circle to Aliens and what ought to have been his career's biggest break. James Remar was cast in Aliens, which was supposed to be the biggest movie of his career, by 1985. He was selected to portray Corporal Hicks, a pivotal role in James Cameron's suspenseful science fiction sequel to Alien. Scenes were filmed, sets were constructed, and filming got underway in England. James Cameron and the rest of the cast worked with Remar for days. Early in the production process, he was there for some of the most intense action scenes. Geared up, delivering lines and locked in. Yet something wasn't quite right. According to reports, Cameron felt the tension and electricity, and at last everything just fell apart, and he was gone in an instant. The public explanation at the time was ambiguous. Remar stated, "They got someone else, and I came home, and took care of the problems and moved on to Band of the Hand in an interview with Starlog from 1986. Due of scheduling issues and creative disagreements, the official story was ambiguous.
Years later, however, Remar came clean. On set, his battle with heroin addiction finally caught up with him. He was silently dismissed from the production after being detained for possession while filming. In a podcast interview years later, Remar would come clean. Despite having a horrible drug issue, I managed to overcome it. In my personal life, I had a fantastic profession, but I ruined it with a horrible drug habit. And he ultimately came clean about it in a sidebar podcast episode. After a few weeks of filming, I was sacked from my original role as Corporal Hicks after being caught in possession of cocaine. I was replaced by Michael Beam. It was heroin. He was replaced by Michael Beam, who had to step in without any rehearsal and occasionally even imitate blocking that had already been filmed with Remar. The rest of the cast became aware of the abrupt change, and there was a lot of misunderstanding, rumors, and questions that weren't actually addressed at the time. A few views of Remar's back or silhouette can still be seen in the final cut of Aliens, a phantom of what might have been. This was not merely a lost chance. It was the kind of setback from which most careers never fully recover. One of the most significant repercussions was from filmmaker Walter Hill, who had given Remar his first significant roles in The Warriors in 48 Hours. "I was alienated from Waterhill for 12 years after I got fired from Aliens," Remar stated. "It was 12 years before he hired me again. And I see why. I tarnished his reputation. In Hollywood, word got around quickly. The risk was undesirable to the directors. Studios pulled back. Later on, Remar acknowledged the time in his life was chaotic. He was losing control, irate, and untrustworthy. His drug use affected more than just sets. It was having an impact on his family, connections, and reputation. In interviews subsequently, he has been forthright about how it almost cost him everything, and in a sense, it did. For a while, it appeared as though James Remar may vanish entirely after Aliens, since the roles dried up and the flame had been quenched. Roles were still available, but they weren't the ones that would put you back on the A-list. He grabbed all he could, including B-movies, video thrillers, and small supporting roles. However, it is visible if you pay great attention. He was slowly and silently rebuilding, one brick at a time. He branched out into darker genre material in the 1990s, playing the vicious and snarly Quill in Tales from the Crypt, Miracle the 34th Street, and The Phantom. He appeared as Raiden in Mortal Kombat and Annihilation, which was an odd casting choice, but it helped him stay in the spotlight. He rose to fame as an underground star, the kind of performer who made you happy to see him even if the film wasn't really good. That type of work has its challenges. He continued to work even if the glossier roles were not coming in, and directors gradually resumed calling. Enough to keep him fighting, but not the major ones yet. And when a certain serial murderer scenario arose in the 2000s, that battle would pay off. James Remar was given a part in 2006 that completely changed who he was for a whole new generation. Dexter Morgan's father, Harry Morgan, is a spectral presence. The vicious heavies he had made his career out of were quite different from this. Remar was composed and focused instead of making nasty threats. He was a moral compass in a program that lacked one. Nevertheless, he maintained his advantage despite the silence. There was a constant tension that seemed to be seething beneath everything, as if even Harry could go too far if pushed. During Dexter's initial run, Remar was in almost all of the shows. Even though he wasn't in charge, he was there all the time, always speaking in Dexter's ear and influencing every choice and code. And for that, crowds adored him. He received some of the best reviews of his career for the performance. He began to settle into a rhythm as a voice actor around the same period. He contributed his gravelly tones to everything from cartoon Batman to Call of Duty, and he portrayed Raiden once more in Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Remar always had it, and it seemed like the business had finally caught up. Even when he wasn't speaking, his presence and weight had the power to get your attention. Dexter wrapped, but James Remar continued. He resumed appearing in major productions. The Rookie, The Path, Shannara Chronicles, Gotham, and State of Affairs. Men with history in their eyes and a sense of gravity are always being played. Age seems to have given Remar an even greater sense of strength. The energy is still deadly, but it's a little more subdued and calm, like a hurricane that is farther out at sea but just as dangerous. He also got recurrent parts in shows like Grey's Anatomy, Wilfred, and Black Lightning, the kind of network mainstays where viewers may not recognize the name, but recognize the voice, and more crucially, the face. And if you look closely, you'll see that he consistently adds weight even in minor roles, in everything from Django Unchained to Judge Dredd to X-Men First Class. He turned into one of those actors who always gave a scene weight and never required the limelight, the sort of presence that never goes away. Like his character, his profession was sturdy and resilient, and it appeared to withstand the storm. Despite being in his 70s, he continues to work, accept roles, and show up. To date, he has appeared in over 150 movies and television series. It's survival, not a resurgence. One aspect of James Remar's life remained constant throughout all the turmoil, ups and downs, and the second act. Since 1984, he and Atsuko Remar had been wed. In a place where relationships rarely endure more than a few years, that's more than 40 years. By all accounts, they kept their family life private, peaceful, grounded, and away from the hubbub while raising their 2 kids together. It is rare for Remar to discuss himself in interviews. He doesn't like to advertise himself. He doesn't appear to be interested in making a glamorous version of his biography or reinventing his background. Additionally, there is humility there, a feeling that he is well aware of the costs and consequences of his survival. He currently resides in California, still occasionally plays roles, attends conventions, and converses with fans who are aware of his identity. Perhaps endurance, rather than rebirth or resurgence, is the legacy. And someone who blazed brightly, fell hard, got back up, got up again, and continued on. It's be that James Remar's lack of a franchise, an Oscar moment, or a grand, flashy redemption story is precisely what makes him so unforgettable. The character that appeared in the third act and took center stage was the one you couldn't quite identify but always recalled. He had a gravelly voice, a heavy gaze, and a tension that was palpable on screen. He portrayed outlaws, mentors, ghosts, killers, police officers, and cop killers, and he did so with a sense of significance. Remar is unquestionably one of those actors who can convey weight without having to play the lead. Even now, decades after The Warrior's 48 Hour and Dexter, people still talk about him, quote him, and think, wait, that's James Remar. He gave every scene a sense of life, danger, and intrigue. In addition to being a journeyman and survivor, he is also an amazing performer. I appreciate everyone watching. Every week I publish 2 new videos, exploring the lives and professions of the stars we never forgot as children and who we grew up watching. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you like this one. Tell me which James Remar portrayal is your favorite or who you would like to see represented next. I sincerely hope to see everyone at the next one.